Hey friends, the average expat in Denmark loses between 1,000 to 5,000 krone a month because of bad financial decisions. Denmark is, after all, a heavily taxed and heavily regulated place, and for example, if you pick the wrong investment, you can end up with a massive tax bill. In this video, I'll tell you 6 key mistakes to avoid and in the process help you save a lot of money. 1. Not having insurance. So yes, mistake number 1 is to not have what the Danes call indboforsikring, so the inbo insurance, the so-called home insurance. And inbo is and can be very comprehensive, so it can include a huge variety of services for which it is good to be insured for. At home, you can get water and weather damage insurance, theft insurance, and also fire damage, because for example, if you live in an apartment, your owner's association will cover fire damage to the structure of the building, so meaning you will still get a new flat. Everything that's inside the flat itself, the moment you have a fire, you will not get covered by that insurance, so you need to get a top-up, and that's something where the inbo can play a part as well. Outside the home, you can get the bike theft insurance, the so-called responsibility insurance, which covers, for example, when you injure someone or their things by accident, okay, you get covered for that. And even things beyond that, so you can get insurance for your electronics, for your glasses, for your camera, and different types of accident. I believe, and most Danes do as well, that this is valuable stuff. So inbo will cover your tail risks big time. So keep in mind also as well that one insurance policy will cover, for example, in my case, myself, my home, but also my wife and the kids. It's almost universal that Danes all have inbo, but it turns out, so far as I hear, that a lot, if not most expats don't have this. I even didn't have it myself until 3 years ago. There are dozens of companies that do inbo. The one I have been using myself, and they don't sponsor this video, but I recommend them, is called Undo. And there's a link down in the video description on you can also get a little discount as well when you use this service. Instead of giving you a huge package and telling you, okay, this is all the things that you get, what you can do with Undo is that you can select which are the things you want to be insured for. What I do myself is that I pay around 200 krone a month, and then myself and my family get as an insurance, so fire damage, water damage, responsibility, theft, camera, and the hobbling helmet. If I would have a fancy bike or a Christiania, like this kind of box bikes, then I would likely also get the bike theft insurance as well, but so far I didn't because it's also quite expensive and my bike is not that nice. I liked Undo so far, and I believe that their customer service has been great to work with so far, and I can 100% recommend it. One of the things that they have been nice to work with as well was that my wife fell from her bike. Now, long story, but it was very windy, he fell. Not too bad, she didn't get injured, but her hobbling helmet popped up. And like within a week, she had a new one sent by Undo straight at home. You had to do a little paperwork, but not too much. And again, 1 week after, she had the helmet on again. For those of you who know, I mean, one of those helmets, they cost around 2,000 krona. So, you know, if you make the mental math, you can see that something like that, just because of this one accident, makes it worth for almost a whole year. Again, there's going to be a link down in the video description for Undo itself. But if you prefer to shop around, there are again dozens of companies that do inboforsikring. And depending on your specific setup and the specific things you want to get covered for, there might be a better option that suits your needs best. Last word on insurance is A-kasse. So A-kasse is the unemployment insurance you can get in Denmark. In my opinion, it's a very good deal. It's not that you need to have this, but if you're planning to stay in Denmark in the medium or long term, I think it makes sense to get it. I made a whole video explaining A-kasse. It's going to be linked up here, where I go through again this in depth, and definitely you should check that out as well if you're planning to stay here for a few more years. Mistake number 2 is to pay too much for housing. So renting in Denmark is very expensive, and unless you got lucky, and some people do get lucky, if you're renting a place for yourself, you'll likely be paying serious money. In this context, you have 2 solutions. So solution 1, or option 1 you could call it as well, is that you go overboard and search for a good rental, because there are good rentals. So I have friends that pay like 10 to 12,000 krona a month for a 80 to 90 square meter flat in a good location in Copenhagen. That is very, very good. And I would say like, okay, I would do that. If you have a long-term horizon and you're lucky, there's also what this is so-called like social housing, where you can put yourself on a waiting list, and the moment you get through the waiting list, which again can take forever, you can get into housing with low cost in very good locations. I have friends, Danish friends, that have gone through this, and like, I mean, this looks like a really good deal. I don't know if I would buy a flat when you're paying so little in rent, right? Option 2, and the more realistic to expats, is to buy a house yourself. So as of 2022, owning a flat or house can be quite accessible, especially if you get access, for instance, to the interest-only loans, because then when you have a setup like flat, for instance, I pay for, this flat, which is pretty nice and it's over 100 square meters. I pay between 10 and 11,000 per month, all inclusive on this. As you can see, I mean, that's not a lot, right? That's even substantially higher than it should, because that garden you see over there, it's really big, and because of that we pay more in taxes, but this is a good deal. I kind of became famous on this, buying a house material, and most of that is because buying a house is a good deal in Denmark, in most cases at least. So if you're paying 15,000 krona per month in rent, you likely need to work on this now. I mean, it's serious money we're talking about here. Mistake number 3 is to not invest. And here I mean not invest in stocks, not invest in index funds, and the like. And look, investing in Denmark involves a lot of rules and regulations that are very complicated to wrap your head around, and they don't always have these taxes and rules, and it's just ridiculous, right? Because it's so complicated, I just didn't invest myself in stocks and index funds and so on here in Denmark for many years, when I 100% should have done that. Instead, what I was thinking was like, hey, why don't I, find a way to invest tax-free and give money to friends so they can invest in some random country, or you can do different setups that you can minimize your tax burden. And it was just a mess. Honestly, it was 100% not worth it. I spent a lot of time and money trying to find a catch, or trying to find a good deal, trying to find a way not to pay a lot of taxes, and it just doesn't work. So I think it's better to just, own it, pay by the rules, and resign yourself that if you want to live in Denmark for the medium and long term, these are the rules and regulations that you need to abide to, and you need to learn them. Honestly, at this stage, fast forward, I'm just happy I made that mental switch. To be fair, Denmark is getting even better for investing. So before I was just so negative about it, right? But if you're literally just starting out, so you're making your first investments of a few thousand krona, or even a few tens of thousands of krona, you can get into a Sparekonto that has low taxes. I mean, up to a limit, right? But again, if you're just starting out, it's pretty well. Once you max that out and then you move to a normal investment account, you still pay 27% in taxes, which is pretty high, but still, you only pay that after the first 50,000, a bit more than 50,000 that you realize. And again, you need to have a lot of money to start reaching all those fancy thresholds. By and large, not too bad. Remember, investing is liquid in the sense that if you need to take your money out, it's not gonna take you that long. So basically, you close your position and the next day you might have the cash in your bank account. You might not be selling at the right time, but you can actually have that money liquid fast. When it comes to housing and so on, you really don't have this option. So it's very nice to have investments in stocks and so on because of this extra liquidity option that you have. And again, I greatly regret not realizing this first, and not being so following up on this especially from my 20s. I encourage you to do this now so you don't follow my mistakes. Mistake number 4 is to invest wrongly. And I just told you that there are a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to investing. That's a huge mistake when you decide not to invest because of this. But another mistake is that, yes, you end up investing, but you then invest in the wrong things, and because of that end up with a huge and unexpected bill from scratch. So if you buy index funds, which is what I recommend to most people, you just need to be very careful and pick the right index fund. So as you'll see here, there's this graph here that you can see on the screen. You'll pretty much have different levels of taxation and different ways to apply this taxation depending on what type of fund you get. Sometimes it's not so straightforward to know which one is which. I made a video linked above that explains the ideal setup you can use to minimize your taxes, and again guides you through this graph in a lot of detail. I, on top of this, have a free course on investing. There's a link down in the video description if you want to check that out. Again, it's absolutely free, and there's a lot of material to help you learn what are the best things you can do to minimize your taxes and invest in the best way possible here in Denmark. Also, if you're enjoying this content, you should definitely subscribe to the channel. I post videos like this every single week. Mistake number 5 is getting a car. So this can be a bit controversial, so hear me out and I'll explain you why. All cool with cars, and in many cases I understand that some people need a car, so I don't say it's just blanket bad to have a car, but I think that many people don't think about the cost of having a car in a very holistic way. To buy a car in Denmark is very, very expensive. So especially when it comes to nicer cars. So you have insane levels of taxation. On top of that, you have the insurance that is expensive, and gas is very expensive, and the whole experience is a humongous money drain. But I mean, what if you need to commute, right? So wouldn't that make sense then to go and get a car? And definitely, yes, absolutely. So if I, for example, had myself to commute, let's say, and taking the car would take me 20 minutes to work, and then otherwise it would go 45 minutes with public transportation or biking, and then I would save it again 25 minutes a day, then we get a car, no doubt about it. But my take is that you should try to avoid the commute in the first place. So you don't really need to justify yourself getting a car because of the commute. You should just try to avoid the commute at all. And the concrete example I want to give you here is that I hear from many people in Copenhagen that they move far from the city, so they move into the suburbs to buy what they call a non-expensive place, but in the end up at a place where they 100% need a car to go to their job, to take the children to kindergarten and daycare and so on. In my opinion, and I back this by math as well, is that it's better to cash flow wise, pay 1 million krona more for a flat in a more central located area with a cheap mortgage, because mortgage is still now, I mean, interest rates are rising a little bit, but still it's very cheap. That is to go and then buy a car and then use that car daily. Cash flow wise, when it comes to the money in your pocket at the end of each month, you'll be worse off with the house further out and the car than paying 1 million krona more and living closer to the city. If you want to live in the suburbs because you get a bigger house, or you like a big garden, or you like the suburb experience, I mean, that's absolutely cool, that's okay. But if you move to the suburbs because you want to save money and then you need a car to save that 1 million krona or whatever on buying a flat or a house closer to the city, think about it twice, because you might not have seen the whole picture holistically. Mistake number 6 is to buy a lot of stuff in Denmark. So Denmark is the most expensive country in the European Union when it comes to consumer goods. So almost everything here is more expensive than anywhere else. So I mean, as you know, it's pretty brutal. There are multiple reasons for this. Let's start, of course, why not, on the 25% VAT, but then also on top of that, like the high labor cost and so on. Just look at, for instance, the Apple index, right? So it's cheaper to buy an iPhone almost anywhere else in the world. And this is just one example for almost a lot of other stuff, from groceries to another electronics to furniture and so on. Denmark is very, very expensive. My take here is that if you're planning to buy something expensive, so a nice camera, I need like a nice computer, a nice phone and so on, you're likely a lot better buying the thing abroad. So for example, if you want to buy a camera in Japan or a computer in the US, you'll end up saving a lot of money. Just as a disclaimer, of course, this is not technically legal, or I mean, yes, of course, you can always use your money anywhere you want, right? But if you bring goods from abroad to Denmark that are over 3,000 krona in value from abroad, again, you need to pay BMT at customs at the airport on the difference. Very few people do this. Like I would say, nobody does this, but I mean, the rules are there to follow. I'm not telling you go and break the rules, but the reality is that if you do this, you save a ton of money. And if you don't want to do this and you still want to buy things in Denmark, you just need to keep in mind as well that Denmark has a thriving market for second-hand items. So you can get really good stuff for the cheap in Facebook, in DBA, in the Lope markets and so on. And this is all from electronics to kids' clothes, you name it. There's almost always excellent value, and I have saved, for example, with my family, a ton of money just buying a lot of second-hand stuff, especially the bulky stuff for my son. And these are things that are almost as new, so you can actually get really good deals like that as well. If you have enjoyed this video, you'll love this one over here where I explain the best ways to save money in Denmark. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again next week.